Jamie Jenkins, could you give us a historical perspective in terms of how bad the weather was or how overly hot it was earlier this week?
Yeah, good evening, Mark. So obviously we have seen all parts of the UK hit these record temperatures. It was kind of forecast. We've had that big kind of jet stream pushing the heat up from kind of southern Europe. And what we've got is basically the hottest July. But if you look at different months of the year, the hottest June actually was in 1976. So there's still a long way to go to kind of beat the hottest June. The hottest November, because obviously we're looking at 12 months of the year in terms of things, was 1938. So it does vary. But I think that the general trend up, Mark, I'm a numbers guy, that the general trend over the last kind of 100 years has been, over the last 20 years, we've started seeing kind of higher than average temperatures than what you've seen in the first 80 years of the last century. But what we don't really have, I suppose, Mark, when you're looking at this in the long term, is kind of what was the temperatures in the, over hundreds and centuries ago. We don't have those. When we talk about breaking records, we're talking about records over the last couple of 100 years rather than the last couple of 1,000 years. But we are seeing the temperatures go up overall.
Are there parallels between how the media have reported rising temperatures with rising case numbers in terms of COVID, with many parts of the media keen to leverage a hot day for the climate change cause?
Well, I think so, Mark. So I live in Wales, and we had a story on the BBC Wales News about a month ago, actually. We had a hot day about a month ago, not as hot as what we've seen over the last couple of days. And they had the chief medical officer in Wales, Dr. Frank Atherton, talking about climate change being a bigger concern than COVID. And then they had a little piece on there as well, talking about kind of wildfires, which you've obviously seen across the news over the last 24 hours, wildfires that we saw last summer in Wales. But what they omitted in there was the fact that it was proven that these fires were caused by arson. So we don't know what's been causing the fires over the last 24 hours, but there does seem to be this kind of, as soon as you get these record temperatures, all these doomsayers come on, they put all these fires on. We don't know what the cause of them in the last 24 hours are, but as soon as it happens, it's all doom and gloom rather than some of the positives of all this better weather.
Is the summer of 1976 a worthy counterpoint to the narrative that Britain's on fire?
Well, the summer of 76 obviously was lower in terms of what we've got now. And some of the kind of the Met Office colleagues that are, would say that we've got record numbers now, but the summer of 76 was a bit more prolonged than what we've got. Like temperatures have pretty much dipped back down to what you would expect for the time of year over the last 24 hours now. It's pretty cool out there. I think until you get those prolonged periods throughout the year as well, I think, we need to treat a bit of caution. But as you've touched upon in the presentation tonight, Mark, as soon as you get these hot temperatures, you get everybody jumping on the climate change bandwagon. There may be something in there, there may be something not, but it does seem to be that as soon as you get some hot temperatures, CO2 emissions, we've had Prince Charles coming out this week, preaching again this week, we need to kind of take a step back and have some calm in all of this, I think.
Yes, and of course, Jamie, people choose the statistics that support their argument, which means if we have a cool August, the climate change fanatics will go very quiet.
No, they will go quiet. And obviously, I think the important thing here, Mark, is the world is kind of warming up, the people are saying, and it's all to do with CO2 emissions. And if you look across the world, China has gone from 5% of CO2 emissions back in kind of the 1970s now, or 1965 actually, up to about 30%. But China's got a huge population. Actually, when you're looking on a per head of population, the UK is relatively in line with what you would expect. We've got about 1% of the world's population, 1.1% of emissions. It's actually countries like Australia and the US where, when you look at the population and the emissions themselves, it's far, far worse. So you talked about obviously coming down to Australia. They've got kind of their own problem in terms of CO2 emissions to tackle. So obviously all this virtual signaling between Prince Charles and these different countries, we really do need to look at it on a per head basis. And actually, some countries think they're doing better, but they're not actually doing better at all.
My thanks to Jamie Jenkins. Check out his brilliant Twitter handle, @StatsJamie, for all of the important information when it comes to COVID, climate and many other issues. He has crunched the numbers so you don't have to.